The following marketing information and discussion is provided for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as professional guidance or consultancy. You should find an agency for that. Comexis is a digital marketing agency, so feel free to hire us. But otherwise, just enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to The Buyer's Journey by Comexis, a discussion-based podcast on the ever-changing marketing landscape. I'm Matthew McGroarty, the social media content producer here at Comexis.
I am Len Ward, the managing partner at Comexis.
And I'm Josh Lyons, the digital marketing coordinator here at Comexis.
So it is Monday, and on Mondays we talk about the awareness phase of the buyer's journey, but we're going to be taking a little bit of a detour today and all this week to talk about the different platforms and their earnings call and earnings reports that came out sometime around last week. And because it is awareness today, we are going to be talking primarily about Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, because Facebook owns them. And that's because Facebook and social media in general are really great for awareness campaigns, so it is super relevant to this, though it is obviously relevant to all stages of the buyer's journey, as we've talked about before. So a lot of this information is coming from Josh Constant on TechCrunch and Salvador Rodriguez on CNBC. I will also link to the transcript of the earnings call in the blog post, as well as to these other articles as well. It's just quite a dense 14-page transcript for them all. So we're going to try and break it down pretty quickly for you. So Facebook reached 2.38 billion monthly users, which is up 2.5% from the 2.32 billion in Q4 2018. And it now has 1.56 billion daily active users, which is up 2.63% from 1.52 billion last quarter. 1.52 billion rather. And Facebook pulled in $15.80 in revenue. $15.08 in revenue? Whoa. Oh, billion. There we go. Jesus. What a typo. Up 26% year over year compared to Refinitiv's consensus estimates of $14.98 billion in revenue. Facebook recorded earnings per share of $0.85 compared to estimates of 1.63 EPS. Len, you can explain what that means, because I'm not a share trader.
EPS is earnings per share.
Thank you. Josh Constant mentions that they had to set aside $3 billion for a potential FTC fine that they're still resolving, which may or may not be higher or lower, but they have the money basically set aside for that anyway. Despite that, Facebook still earned $2.429 billion in profit, which is actually down from the $4.988 billion a year ago and $6.8 billion in Q4 2018. It's possible that Facebook's, as I mentioned, Facebook's fine will be lower, though it kind of depends on what the FTC decides to do with that. Facebook also mentioned that it has a 66% daily to monthly user ratio, showing people that aren't necessarily using Facebook less, despite all of the backlash, which I'll put some links into the different stories that we've talked about internally and or on the podcast before. And it also added 39 million daily users compared to Snapchat's addition of 4 million in quarter one. But Facebook failed to grow past its 186 million daily user count in the US and Canada, where it got stuck last quarter, but did add 4 million in Europe and had some nice large gains in Asia Pacific and the rest of the world regions. And obviously a lot of this also involves Mark Zuckerberg announcing plans for a massive privacy-centric overhaul of Facebook. We haven't talked about this on the show yet because it was pretty hot news last week. But Facebook is going to be potentially redesigning the desktop look of the site. So it actually kind of looks a little bit more like Instagram in the center with your posts scrolling through. And then on the left and right, you will have your friends list basically on the left, and then on the right, a couple different group things. I will link to that in the blog description. There's a chance we'll talk about it on the show, but it is something that Mark Zuckerberg made a big point of in the earnings call as well. Yes, Josh?
Just a side note, I noticed that Twitter is actually also doing sort of a redesign on their desktop.
I haven't heard.
So you actually have the ability you can go back to the old version, or you can go to their new testing version on the desktop.
Oh.
And it actually looks very similar to what Facebook's trying to do now. And that's been, I think Twitter's been doing that for the last month or so. So I just thought it was interesting because it has a pretty similar layout.
Okay. Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg mentioned that they want Facebook to be less of a town square, which is kind of what they envisioned it years ago, and more of a living room. So it's more of you being able to interact with your close friends and things like that, rather than you publicly blasting everything into the ether. Right. So that involves things like they're going to be adding end-to-end encryption and stuff like that to messaging, other things like that. So that is a part of this as well, that they're going to be changing some things up. So Len, what do you think about this?
All right, so when I look at these numbers on Facebook, I want to preface this by saying that if you are in marketing, if you are a chief marketing officer, if you work at a digital agency, or if you are the person making marketing decisions, it's essential that the earnings call of these platforms, we'll start with Facebook here, is just as important as almost anything you're doing in regards to advertising. You have to understand the health of the company, you have to understand what they're going to do, and then you have to understand how your brand's message or your client's brand message is going to fit on the Facebook platform. By looking at the earnings of what's happening right now, it's very evident that more and more advertisers are not just going to Facebook, but they're consistently going to Facebook. Facebook's number one driver of revenue is ad dollars on the site. So if you're a company out there and you're debating the merit of Facebook anymore, you're a company that needs to start thinking about going out of business. And I don't mean to be, kind of maybe a little blunt, but it's got to the point where there should no longer be a conversation, where the conversation died a couple years ago about, I don't know if I should be on Google or not. The conversation of whether you should be on Facebook or not should die too. 80% of all ad dollars online are going to two people. They're going to Google/YouTube, and they're going to Facebook/Instagram. Your portfolio and how you market right now from a digital standpoint, you should have 40% of your digital dollars or ad dollars going towards Facebook/Instagram. It's not even debatable. And until Facebook or Google loses that grip, your advertising right now, your bucket should be 80% going that way. 20% you want to kind of throw a little bit on Snapchat and so forth. But so when I continue to look at this and I look at these ad dollars coming in and I look at the revenue that Facebook has right now, it's showing me that I want to continue to keep my clients 40% invested in Facebook, obviously with Instagram mixed in there as well. The thing I keep saying on these earnings reports that you have to look for is that these analysts love to keep hammering home how many users are on Facebook. I read a report yesterday where they said was it within the next 20 years, and I hate when people analyze, they just want to look at investments 20 years out. We could be involved in 2 more wars. We don't know what the hell's going on. But when they did say that, it was in 20 years or whatever the metric is, I'll try to find it, we'll put the link in there, is the dead will outnumber the living on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that? Which I thought was really interesting. Game of Thrones kind of, but I found it really, really interesting. But when you're looking at these types of earning reports and you're trying to figure out, well, how should I look at Facebook? You want to try, the number one number you want to look at is the time on the site. If the time on the site is increasing, and that's what Facebook's trying to do right now, then you have an entity where you want to start moving more and more ad dollars. I will say this. I believe we've moved to the point in 18 months where I believe I will recommend Facebook to actually have more of an investment in Facebook and Instagram than you will on Google for the awareness stage. Meaning nobody's aware of your product. I wasn't aware of that Vineyard Vines shirt, blah, 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 whatever it may be, and that came along on your feed. When it comes to consideration, specifically searching for something, Facebook has not hit the point where people are actually searching in the search bar, although that's changing, and looking for plumber near me, lawyer near me, so you still want to have your ad dollars in Google. But from an awareness standpoint, getting your message out there, getting your brand's new product out there, letting somebody know you've opened up a new store, has no idea who you are, Facebook and Instagram, far and away, beyond TV, beyond radio, beyond anything else, is the number one place where you should put in your ad dollars. And these reports, these earnings reports, are a direct reflection of that. And here's the best part about it. Facebook hasn't even remotely touched the surface. There are 50% of businesses in this world have not even, maybe even 60% of businesses have not even walked to Facebook's counter yet and said, I'd like to purchase some advertising. Let that sink in for a minute. You can buy a stock right now at $193 that, in my personal opinion, will start reflecting what Google is at $1,000 some odd dollars, what Amazon is $1,000 some odd dollars. Many people call this the golden age of Facebook because it's an affordable metric to get into. But when you keep looking at these numbers and how these numbers are progressing, the golden age is going away. So it's kind of where I'm looking at for it. And when we do at Comexus look at where we should be putting clients in, to us, the earnings reports are beyond important. Take away all the other metrics that people love, the SEO and pay-per-click and all this bullshit people love to tell you about marketing. At the end of the day, it's pay-per-play in this world anymore. If you want your brand to be out there, you need to pay dollars. Not about trying to manipulate a search engine, whatever it may be, and this is the way to do it, and their numbers are clearly showing it. So
Yeah,
that's my
absolutely.
rant.
So one thing that I want to mention that was in their earnings call was that Mark Zuckerberg mentioned that Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp Stories feature now have 500 million daily active users, and that they hit that mark in January. But Facebook CEO Sheryl Sandberg on Wednesday said that the company now has 3 million advertisers using Stories ads across Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger. There's a quote from her: "Stories are an increasingly important growth opportunity. We're helping advertisers keep up with the shift in how people are sharing, just as we did with mobile." And Stories was also the largest contributor to year-to-year impression growth for the company during the first quarter. So just one thing to keep in mind, as Len mentioned, about the different ways that Facebook has yet to even scratch the surface. They just added Stories, last year, basically, and they're already an incredible addition to the site. I mean, obviously, we have them on Instagram where they're super popular. Now they're on WhatsApp, and then you include Facebook on there. It's a nice little combination of all of them together. Josh, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, it's sort of, when I think about it in my own personal mind, when I'm going on Snapchat or Instagram, I click the stories first. Before I even scroll on my feed, I'm usually on the stories because it's the first thing that pops up. It's at the top. You see who it's gonna incorporate instead of scrolling and looking and finding. When I go on Facebook, it's the complete opposite. I rarely touch the story feature. I'm immediately scrolling. So it's interesting that now that they're obviously on the very beginning stages of their stories, and now they already have 3 million advertisers, as they continue to grow and find new ways to advertise on the story feature and make the story feature more, I guess, user-friendly, it would make more sense that I would do the same thing that I would on Snapchat or Instagram and be clicking the story button the second I log on to the app. So it's interesting to see, because you're right, it's only been like a year and a half that the story feature has been available. So, they're right in the beginning stages of just sort of taking that over and even outdoing what Snapchat and Instagram have been so successful in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for them to get more impressions on there, and obviously to help get ad dollars once more people figure out kind of the best ways in which to do what they're doing. So, good.
Good.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
You know one last thing I wanted
for
to
it.
touch in? You were talking about how, did we touch on this about how Facebook's redesign and what they're doing? And
yeah, I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but I didn't go super in depth on it. But
all right, so
if you
there,
have thoughts, lay them on me.
there's two ways why social media companies and everybody else comes in and wants to redesign stuff, take away from Snapchat. But what Facebook's doing, you mentioned on Twitter and so forth, is it's obviously user experience. But the reality of the situation is, this is where I think that they're a little smarter than what Google's done. Google's painted themselves in a corner where you got your standard search, here it is, and what Google did was they took away the right side of desktop and said, okay, we're going to do all ads here. Google screwed themselves because now there's a limited spot of real estate of where they can go with ads. The genius what Facebook's doing and what Twitter's doing, because it's a living, breathing entity like social media and people are interacting unlike a social or a search engine, is that the second reason why you do a layout is where can we maximize ad dollars? Where can we put certain spots that would make it work better? So as much as they're going to tell you user experience, the reality of the situation is they're going to take a look at it. How many times are people clicking a certain part of the page via phone or to a lesser point desktop? And that's what they're trying to do it. That's a major, major advantage they have until Google, which do not be surprised, they come out with a major overhaul, which I think they're going to because they're going to need to. That's a major advantage they have over regarding where your ad dollars should be. So as you are thinking about your ad dollars and where they need to be, keep that in mind. The initial rollout of Facebook's new white background and so forth, I actually find it to be a little cleaner. I'm very interested to see how the rest of this new rollout looks, and I do have to look at Twitter. And hopefully nothing's the unmitigated disaster that Snapchat rolled out. But it's another thing to keep in mind as well, is that every time you think of a platform, you have to think, what are they doing in regards to maximizing their ad dollars? Ad dollars fuel every one of these platforms we're talking about. That's all I got.
No, I think you're completely right. I mean, one of the big things about this redesign is that it helps increase the likelihood of people seeing ads, which on Facebook desktop, because of how I would call it crowded, Facebook desktop can feel, it can be very easy to not pay attention to ad, miss an ad. Whereas say on Instagram, which I don't want to say they're completely modeling it off of Instagram, because obviously when you're on Facebook desktop, like there's more parts to it, though there's significantly less parts in this redesign than there are currently. On Instagram, it's harder to miss an ad because it's a gigantic image taking up at least a third of your screen. And then same thing in Facebook stories and Instagram stories, where it's taking up your whole screen. It is unavoidable, even if you're skipping through it at breakneck pace. So yeah, I think you're completely right. It's definitely part user experience, part this is going to make sure that we maximize our ad impressions and ad dollars. So, well, thank you everybody for tuning in to today's episode of The Buyer's Journey. Check us out on Comexis.com, YouTube, and anywhere you can get your podcasts. And please follow us on Twitter at @buyers_journey. Thanks for listening.